Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 88. The third test squad has been announced. There's been fallout from player interactions with the fans, and we discuss Eddie's future. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. As promised, our midweek episode, we're going to have a look at the team for Saturday's final test against South Africa. And as always, I'm joined by Dan. Hi, mate.
Morning, boss. How are we doing? Where's your head at? How are you feeling about this test last week, everything?
I think it would be so easy to jump on the bandwagon and just start saying, you know, it's disastrous, it's game over. I mean, some of the ridiculous stuff that's coming out about how Eddie Jones needs to lose his job and all this sort of stuff. And I think, you know, as I say, it's easy to jump on that bandwagon, but you take a step back and say, well, hold on a second. You know, this is a guy who helped England to, and I say helped England to a world record equaling win streak in 2016, an unbeaten year. He was coach of the year. Now, unless, and I'm sure he has
two Six Nations titles in a row.
Yeah, you know, unbeaten down in Australia and all these things. And it's, unless he's torn up the kind of the game plan from 2016, which I'm sure he hasn't, I think you have to sort of say, well, hold on a second. He got it right then. He's doing the same thing now. The rest of the world hasn't suddenly turned around and gone, oh, we know what you're doing. We know how to deal with that. You know, yes, there'll be maybe an element of certain aspects of the way England play has been identified, but I think we can all agree that the biggest issue with the last two games and, you know, prior to that Six Nations and so on is discipline. We've said it, you know, constantly since before the Six Nations. It comes up in pretty much all other media outlets. He talks about it before every game, and then the players still go out there and make stupid mistakes.
He's not coaching them to do that.
Exactly.
That can't be. Yeah, exactly. So it's not exactly his fault. He's not saying to them, "Go and give away those penalties." It unfortunately, what I found, and something quite interesting, because I've had a bit of a sort of sour week with it, but actually when I thought about it, so if you look at 2011 World Cup and afterwards the antics like Manu jumping off the ferry and things, the players just seemed a bit out of control, just a bit. And then Stuart Lancaster came in. And in fairness, what he did to him is he installed a real sort of sense of pride, a real sense of dignity about how they portray themselves on and off the pitch. Mm-hmm. And that, to an extent, was great, but also didn't work. When Eddie came in, he's like, right, I want, and these are my words, but I want it to just be a bit more nasty, a bit tougher. And he did that, and he did that to great effect. Where I think the problem is, a few things, we only seem to go to extremes. We don't seem to be able to find that happy mix between keeping that level of dignity and keeping that edge, keeping that, you know, that bit of nastiness. Yep. We only seem to go one extreme to the other. And also the thing is, so I was a bit pissed off at the weekend with like Ben Youngs walking off the interview. Mike Brown and Joe Marler had an argument with a fan. And don't get me wrong, I think the fan was pathetic. I think the fan was in the wrong, but you'd still hope they'd just be like, sod him, he's pathetic. But it sort of shows almost I think the word we're using is sort of an immaturity.
Like a petulance almost.
Yeah, exactly. However, when you're winning and the players are acting like that, we like it because we're like, that's what gives them the edge to win.
Yeah. When
they're losing and they're acting like that, we jump on their back. So there is a bit of it, but we're, you know, what they're good for, we slag them off when they win. We slag them off, we congratulate them when they win. But that same sort of behaviour, we slag them off for when they're losing. So I do agree with you to an extent. There is a level of, you know, being a bit harsh on it all. However, there is still, I think there can be more of a happy mix. When you lose, I do think you need to, I do still think there's a way to slightly conduct themselves a bit better. Now, ultimately, I don't care if we win. So, you know, that's kind of half going against what I'm saying.
You don't care if we win?
if we win, I don't really care about those sort of behaviours. I don't care about Mike Brown and Joe Marler telling the fan to fuck off. In all honesty, the fan has been a prick, and I'm on their side for that. You know, they're not going out there. They're not. It's not that they're not trying. You know, it's not going right, but you know, to call them a disgrace, I think it's bang out of order.
I know what you mean. I mean, my immediate reaction, and whilst I wouldn't have had the bottle to say it to his face, was to tweet something about England's performance being disgraceful and letting the fans down. See, part of me says, look, you know, Mike Brown, you were interviewed, you responded well, and you explained, you know, we're out there, we're putting our bodies on the line, and I get that, but you're getting paid a pretty decent amount of money. We've talked about this before. You're getting paid a lot of money to do that, and not only are you getting paid a lot of money to put your body on the line, but you're doing the thing that you love. I mean, you literally have the perfect job. You know, it's something you're passionate about, and you're getting paid a shitload of money to do it. So yes, you're putting your body on the line, but you're getting paid to do that. So I'm not sure that I would say that whilst I don't agree with, you know, an England fan screaming in their faces, I think actually it's their job to not react to that kind of thing. You know, because they are there representing the fans. You know, it's not Mike Brown and his teammates are out there for themselves and it's just about them. And if people want to come and watch, that's their business. The reason why these guys are able to get paid all this money is because the fans are paying to go and watch them. So I think there is a certain expectation, and we said it last week. If England played brilliantly and were beaten, it would be frustrating. It would be disappointing. But you'd say, do you know what? We got outplayed. When England start a game like they have done both the last two Test matches, proving that they are a quality setup when it's going right, proving that they know how to play this game at the highest level. And then they put in a performance like they did for the rest of the following 60 minutes. I have to say, I think that is the players letting their fans down, and that is the players not doing enough. So that may not be the most popular view, but actually I think, hold on a second, guys. Look, it's all well and good saying you shouldn't be spoken to that way because you're putting your bodies on the line, but you know, we'd all like to get paid £250,000 a year to do the thing we love.
Yeah, and so I do agree with that. They did let themselves down. I just think I still think the fans are pricks doing that. I think there's a way to go about it. Emotion, that's not the right time. Fine. You can give, and as fans, as BBC pundits, it does annoy me the way that sometimes Savedi and his team treat the sort of media. You look at sort of BBC and attack them. It is their job. It is their job to question things. And inevitably, some of those questions are looking for a reaction. I do think there's a better way to go about it, but also vice versa. From a fan's perspective, I don't think it's fair to be shouting at them. But I mean, these are small bits. But the reason I bring this up is it sort of almost shows the sort of behaviour of the team. We're using the word ownership a lot. It does almost show that a bit. It does almost sort of show. I remember, and someone who over the years I've not necessarily been a massive fan of, but Gavin Henson. I remember one match I can't remember if it was for Bristol or Ospreys or whoever it is he's been paying for, when a fan tweeted him saying something like, that was a terrible performance. And he replied saying, do you know what? My game was off. I need to work on this. Yeah, I need to put in a better performance. And it was kind of like, wow, I really respected him for saying that.
Let's not forget that's with the benefit of hindsight. That's with the benefit of being able to sort of cool head post game.
Exactly.
In his case, quick selfie and do his hair, and he's on his way out for the night. But and these guys are media trained. It's part of the professionalism. So I think, with time to think about your response, that's easy. But actually, it's interesting what you say with the Mike Brown situation, because I'm assuming you've also seen the interview with him. And the more
do you know what? I haven't seen that, actually.
Fine. I mean, it's a 5-minute video interview where they talk about the incident, and that's where he's saying, look, I was pretty reserved, I thought, and we're putting our bodies on the line and we're putting in effort week in, week out, and obviously we're frustrated when it doesn't go our way and all this sort of stuff. But I would argue that if that's you guys putting in maximum effort, then we have a problem. Now, I don't believe that they were putting in maximum effort. Now, the reasons behind that could be many. They've played a lot of rugby this year, but ultimately there was something missing. We've been saying it for a little while. There's something missing from the players in terms of, I don't know, like that passion to put the shirt on, and it's almost like, in that first 20 minutes. Things are going their way. They get off to a quick start, few flying tries, they're loving life, and then suddenly, how dare this opposition team challenge us? And their heads go down, and they don't. They're not as switched on.
Do you know something that really sort of stood out for me? I can't remember who it was, but somebody with Vermeulen, it was at a breakdown, a whistle went or something, probably England gave away a penalty. And one of the England players pushed Vermeulen away, not in a sort of, just in a getaway as they do. And Vermeulen's reaction was just the immediate, they wouldn't back down. They wanted it. You could see in his face how much he wanted it, the aggression. Whereas the England push was almost sort of get out of the way sort of thing. You could see how much the Sappers wanted it. And they did want it more than us.
Yeah.
So... yeah, although, and I still stick by it, I think this fan was out of order, and I think there's a wrong time. But you're right. If Mike Brown sort of just saying, we're trying our best, we're doing this, we're not. If it's not good enough, it needs to be changed, and I think they need to accept that.
That's the key, isn't it? And that's the difficult job that Eddie Jones has in front of him, is working out where on paper he's got the best player in a particular position, but actually that player he's not getting the best out of that player, and therefore knowing when to say, look, you got to go away and prove yourself again, because right now you're not doing for me what I need in this team. And at this point, I'm not going to start trying to predict what that who should go and what he should do and who he should replace him with. But there's a lot of stuff that needs dealing with in that respect.
Yeah, and there is, and I suspect that will be looked at, but. Because I know we both listened to the the BBC sort of rugby podcast with Chris Jones and Hugo Monia, and both of those guys are pretty damn knowledgeable. But it was also hearing the Eddie Jones interview, and he said some things that I really did resonate with me. There's some things that I don't necessarily agree with him with, but he said what made us a good team then will make us a good team again. I do agree with that. He also said that he thinks for us to move to the next level, we do need sort of a level of attrition. It was slightly bound to happen. I do agree with that to an extent as well.
I do, but I think then you look at New Zealand and you say, well, when they've been number one in the world, number one in the world for 8 years. When did they go through this?
That's the exact argument. It is a slightly different scenario, but that's very true. New Zealand don't go through this, and they do get better and better. But I think maybe the a better way to put it wouldn't be like, of course you're going to go through it, but to say, if it happens, it doesn't mean the end. You can get through this sort of a situation, and I genuinely believe that England will, because, like I say, I don't feel like we're being outplayed. I just don't feel like we're playing 80 minutes of rugby at the moment. I think we're making terrible decisions. I think we're making. I think, and by the decisions that includes giving the ill discipline.
Yeah,
I mean they're just awful decisions. But just to give away those penalties.
Yeah, the decision to slap someone ahead, the decision to reach out and grab a ball when you're lying on the floor and in front of the referee it's not allowed, the decision to, roll onto the wrong side of the ball, the decision to go into contact with no support around you, the decision not to support the player with the ball, all these sort of little things.
Take points, yeah.
And absolutely, I mean, I don't want to point the finger at Owen Farrell and say that it's his fault. Yes, you've got to take points, but there are other leaders in the team, and they would have a game plan as well going into that match. I don't think you go into games like that saying kick all your points. You look at the way Clive Woodward talks. It's like always take your points, build the score, build the score, build the score. If Eddie Jones was saying that to his team, and maybe this is a complaint of Eddie, But if Eddie Jones was saying the same thing to this England side now, you would like to think that Owen Farrell in that situation would take the kick, because that's kind of been discussed and that's what they've decided to do. So I wonder whether, for whatever reason, and it's clearly not worked out, the decision has been, if you're inside, if you're in that sort of zone, go for the points. Maybe England overly backed their line out and their ability to catch and drive, but I'm not convinced we've scored any of those.
No, we didn't
on this tour.
Well, we definitely didn't, because we didn't score any points after.
Well, no, I don't mean necessarily last weekend, but I'm saying generally, I don't think we've scored a try off a line out yet on this tour, have we? So,
no, not from memory.
Our tries all seem to come from out wide, lovely little passages of play. So that frustrates me. I know, but I think I don't think that's something that you can say. Well, Owen Farrell's not capable of making those decisions. It needs to be discussed beforehand. And I like the way that Clive Woodward talks about build a score, constant pressure on the opposition. And it would, in hindsight being what it is, it would obviously, it's easy to say, well, particularly in the first test, that would have, probably won us the game if we'd done that, because it would have put more and more pressure on South Africa. I mean, you just don't know how things would turn. But it's a pretty good sort of game plan to have going into any match, I think. Rather than relying on awesome passages of play to run you in wingers' tries.
Well, exactly. And a lot of people seem to give Clive Woodward a hard time. Now, one thing I'll say about Clive Woodward, he knows how to build a winning team. And it wasn't a one-off World Cup win. I mean, we were the best team in the world, and we were destroying. So, he does have a fair point. And they did it based on that. Build the score, take the points where you can.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We had a Johnny. We don't. Owen Farrell, as great as he is, his kicking's not as good as a Johnny. But we're suddenly still, if we're taking those kicks at goal, say we've got 6 points from them, that still makes a big difference. Yep. We're still then massively in the game to the end. It changes the dynamic of the game.
Yeah.
It changes the way we play. And the whole sort of go for the corner, go for the try. The risk reward to me is not paying off. It's not paying off anywhere near what it should do. So it frustrates me that we're still doing that.
I think I think you limit that sort of decision to when, obviously at the end of the game, if you need it because you're running out of time.
Yeah.
But even then, there's a decision about are we going to need the 3 as well? If you're 6 points behind with 5 minutes to go, of course you go for the corner. If you're 8 points behind with 5 minutes to go, I suppose actually that's probably a bad example, because maybe then you have to weigh up what's more likely that we're going to get a penalty in kicking range. But anyway, that's a scenario will have been discussed in house. What I don't think is that when you're 3 points behind going into half time, 2 minutes from the end of the half, that you go for the corner rather than level the scores. Or sorry, in fact, no, not even then. You are 3 points up. 3 points up with about 5 minutes left in the half. Why not make it 6?
Yeah, it was. I think we were 2 points up because we ended up going in down, didn't we? I think we went in 13-12. But either way, you're exactly right. Why? It almost seems, and yes, the aggressive side, and like we said, we kind of like that aggressiveness and nothing. But you still got to manage a game. A game of rugby, you still need to manage, and you still need to control it. And
do you know what? So I think one of my biggest problems with having your kicker as your captain is, from Owen Farrell's point of view, and I don't know what he's like from a personality point of view, but is there an element of he's going, look, I don't want to let the side down, so if my captain told me to kick that, I'd go and kick it and do my best and probably stick it between the pins. But when it's my decision, I don't want to say I'm going to take the points and then miss it and I've let the team down. I'd rather go to the corner and let 8 to 15 men try and create points. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I don't think Owen Farrell would back down from that challenge.
Oh, I don't think he would. I don't think he'd back down from the challenge of taking on the kick. But when the decision to take that kick is his and he's the kicker, I think for him it would be so much easier to have a Dylan Hartley, or in fact anyone else, as his captain, say, Owen, I want you to put that through the pins.
So the Dylan Hartley thing is interesting because both you and I are saying, if he's fit, and let's take the injury and whatever happened to him, we obviously wish him a massively speedy recovery and everything's fine. But we've both said we want him back, and I do if assuming he's playing well and things. But did you hear the Eddie Jones interview where he said that Jamie George? Now with Eddie, you don't want to read into things too much, but he said Jamie George has now moved to the starting hooker.
Well, he didn't say that. He said Jamie George has taken on the role of starting hooker, and he's basically doing a great job.
So I think I've imagined something that wasn't there then.
Yeah, I think it was more of a Jamie George on this tour is the starting hooker, because don't forget Eddie Jones has pretty much caveated everything with this is the best team from the players that were available. He also pointed out that we're currently missing 450 caps through injuries and resting. So 450 international caps are at home as potential test players.
Yes.
Which is a lot. And it doesn't mean to say that all of those caps should be in the starting 15, 23. But part of what we're here to do is make excuses, because if we don't make excuses, then what do we have to go on? It'd be a pretty boring episode if we simply said there are no excuses, it was shit. Okay, well that's the end of that. Let's move on. We're going to make excuses. That's part of being super biased and believing that England are going to win this World Cup next year. That's one of my big ones there. 450 caps are at home.
There's a lot at home, and there's a lot that we can be thankful for. But there's, like you say, those caps at home. It's different if you're being outplayed, but when you're making sort of fundamental, sort of poor decisions with regards to the sort of discipline and things, that's still something that needs to be addressed. I really hope that's addressed. I mean, it is something that Eddie did touch on and say, but do you know what? If we need to lose these now for the players to realise how costly those poor decisions are to stop that happening in the World Cup, bring it on. I'm happy to sacrifice the losses now.
Absolutely, and I think the players need to take responsibility. I don't want to hear players like Mike Brown not defending the way that they've played, but kind of almost saying, "Look, can everyone leave me alone? Like I tried my best," because I don't believe they did, and I think that's the wrong attitude. I think at the end of the day, when you have a loss like that, when you want to be the number one team in the world, you need to. And Dylan Hartley is brilliant at this. Even when England win, he's not happy. It's we want to be better. We want to be better. We want to be better. Not we did our best. That's completely the wrong approach. So for that reason, I'm not. I wasn't overly impressed with his response to that whole incident. Anyway, let's move on to the test that's coming up. And just before we do, I just wanted to say a quick thank you. So we had a couple of responses to our little rant from the beginning of last week's episode, or the last episode, about one of our listeners, or one of our ex-listeners, although maybe he's still listening, who knows. A few of you coming back and just letting us know that you are still happy with the way that we biasedly support England, and that you enjoy listening to what we have to say. So really appreciate those. And there's one in particular.
Yeah, thank you very much.
One in particular, I got a message here. Says it's Cameron King is his name. Kamalama or something is his Twitter handle. But yeah, Cameron King. And he says, "Hi guys, I'm a listener from Glasgow and thoroughly enjoy the pod, even though as an avid lover of Scotland rugby rather, and everything Scottish, I probably shouldn't be enjoying this. However, I do. I find your take biased, yes, but what country wouldn't? In regards to the last pod and Wayne, whatever his name was, ignore him, and as the French say, fuck the haters." I don't know if the French say that, but he says, "You're giving an insightful and heartfelt view on English rugby, and although this is a dip in form, I'm sure like any other team on their day, there's every chance England can win the World Cup. Every chance? Of course they're going to win. Although I hope they don't. Haha. I look out for a new episode every week and relish listening to them on Spotify when out with my dogs. Keep pumping out that decent content," from Cameron King. So really appreciate your feedback. Really appreciate you getting in touch. It's nice to it's always nice to hear from you guys, and particularly when it's in reference to something we've said the week before, because it just kind of shows like a really good level of engagement. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Cameron. And being certainly from my point of view, being a fickle man I am, that definitely does give me a boost. Scotland are my second favourite team now. But actually, it's. Do you know what was interesting? And this I think will hopefully build us up to the team selection this week. So Scotland got quite a lot of abuse last week. This is sort of relevant to England. Scotland, because they lost to the USA by a point. Now, Scotland put out a team, and they had a lot of new caps, a lot of people who hadn't got the international experience. And yeah, it's a shame to lose to the USA. But a few points that I was thinking from this is, firstly, it's not that big a deal. There's a lot of players that have got missing. So USA are actually not a terrible team right now. They're probably not that far away from Italy. I'm not saying they're great, but also I think that Scotland would have learned a lot from those new players. And it may be that they've learned these guys aren't ready for Test rugby yet. But that loss, I think at least Scotland have learned something from it. Whereas one of my sort of complaints that I say to you a lot, mate, is I don't know how much we're learning from these losses. Hopefully we're learning a lot. Hopefully we're learning about the discipline, like we say. But if we're putting in the same players week in, week out, how much are we learning? Whereas at least Scotland put out a new team and thought, do you know what? These guys probably aren't quite ready yet.
Yeah.
And I think that probably brings us on to sort of the team this week.
Well, because... yeah. So before we kind of mention the team, so we've been chatting kind of throughout the week, and there's been an awful lot of chat on Twitter, obviously. I'm just going to pull up. So I put a team together of what I wanted to see, which I thought would be interesting to have a look at that and then compare it to what actually happened. So I said, so first up, I wanted to see a complete switch of the front row. So see the finishers start and the starters, obviously minus Mako, finish. For those that don't know, Mako has gone home early. He's just had his baby. So congratulations to him and the missus. But yeah, so I wanted to see Marler, Cowan, Dickey and Williams starting. I wanted to see Launchbury and Isekwe starting in the middle. And then have Shields, Simmons, because obviously Sam Simmons, for those that don't remember, was awesome when he played for England. And has been on the bench, has been in the touring squad, but not involved for the last two matches. Why? I don't know. So I wanted to see that as my kind of starting pack.
Who was your third back row? Sorry, was it Curry?
So Shields, Simmons, and Curry to start.
Cool. Yeah.
And then on the bench have Hepburn, George, and Sinclair. Covering the front row to come on, and Itoje involved, but on the bench, because I almost feel like if you drop him from the 23, it might send the message that we want to give you a rest. Whereas I think put him on the bench, it sends the message that we don't think you're in the right place to start right now. So I wanted him involved, but on the bench. Hughes on the bench, so you've got that option of bringing on that kind of impact player. And then my backs, I wanted to see. I wanted to stick with Ben Spencer to start because he's been on the bench. I have Spencer, Cipriani, Farrell. I then wanted to see Daly at 13, which I've talked about before, but I'm not overly upset that he's not. Solomona and May on the wings, and Woodward, who's also out on tour and plays 15 week in, week out, who hasn't been used.
He plays it bloody well.
See him at the back. And then have Robson, who we've been calling for a while, ready to come on and change it up at scrum half. Lazowski and Nathan Earl as our backup winger, who's also looked pretty sharp when he played for England. And I just feel like with a Test series already lost, so going into the tour, I didn't want it to be about trialing lots of new players, but I feel like with the Test series already lost, give these guys that you've taken on tour for the last 4 weeks or however long it will have been, give them a chance. Fair enough if you don't think they're first choice, and it's a series decider, but it's not. We've made quite sure of that with the way that we've performed. So I would have been inclined to say, the kind of the first team haven't performed So let's give the others a chance. And it would have given us a really good insight into what those guys are like. Love him or hate him, Ben Youngs is proven. Whether that's what you're looking for or not, you kind of know everything you need to know about him. He doesn't need to be tested to see if he's still good enough. So is there any value in having him involved on this, for this last test?
I like the sound of that team. The only thing I would have done slightly different to you, I think, is, well, it's a couple of things. Overall, I think it's sort of pretty similar. I would have, I probably would have started Robson purely because him and Cipriani played together at Wasps. So I think that would have been quite nice for them to start together. And I think at 13, I probably would have kept Daly at fullback. I'd still had Solomona and May on the wing. I wouldn't have mind seeing Lazowski start at 13, just because he played so well for Saracens the last few games.
Yeah.
And I'm still buying into this Daly at fullback thing, and I know we're slightly different on that, but I'm still hoping that's going to turn into something magical.
Yeah. Well, look, anyway, this year, so this is what I wanted to see. This is not what we're going to see.
What has materialised? Yeah.
So the big news is that Danny Cipriani starts at 10. Which we've all wanted to see. It's been a decade since his last Test start for England, and that ironically was against South Africa, which I think we lost. Back in whenever it was, 2008, I guess.
2008, yeah.
So that's great. However, as one of the best attacking fly halves in the Premiership right now, he wants a pitch like the last two. Where he can get out there and run about a bit. We're expecting it to be wet and windy. So it's not ideal for him. I really hope that he pulls it off in style, because I would hate for him to be thrown in to what really is the deep end and told to sink or swim.
I think Danny Cipriani's got enough about him to swim. The conditions are. So you say best attacking fly half in the Premiership. He's best fly half in the Premiership. I think by some way for me this season. The conditions aren't ideal, but I'm backing Danny Cipriani to really, really put that 10 jersey under pressure, because even when he came on for the last 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was last week, he just had something. He just had a sort of a bit of energy, a bit of something that was missing. He just seemed to really, and if he can bring that to the game this week, even if the conditions aren't great, if he can just bring that bit of his, whatever it is he has to the game.
Je ne sais quoi, as the French say.
Exactly. With a lot of, crediting the French with a lot of sayings today. But yeah, exactly that, because I think Danny Cipriani does have something a bit magical. But very few fly halves in the world have. Bowden Barrett, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Frustratingly, he's the only change in the backs.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned already, Ben Youngs, don't really see the value in including him when you've got someone, in the squad that you haven't seen yet in an England shirt. And I also feel like Ben Youngs has been a bit lacklustre over the last couple of games.
Yeah, Faf de Klerk has outplayed him. Faf de Klerk has sort of been the better scrum half, but I completely agree. I don't see. I mean, we had a bit of a chat about this. To me, that's the biggest where we've lost the most. I'd really want Dan Robson involved, be it on the bench, be it to start. I really think Dan Robson deserves it. The way he's played all season.
I completely agree with you. We had a little chat before the episode today, and I was saying to you, the thing that we've got to bear in mind is that we're obviously not in camp. We don't know what's going on the training pitches. For all we know, Dan Robson hasn't fully grasped the kind of the intricacies of this England setup. For all we know, and it's complete speculation, he hasn't been performing on the training field, and that's one of the reasons why he's not been involved. And if that's the case, fair enough. We are making the assumption that he's been as good in training for England as he's been all season.
For Wasps.
If that is the case, then it makes no sense to me whatsoever. But I would have had I would have probably had Ben Spencer starting because, he's clearly the form, or in Eddie's opinion, he's clearly the form of the two. That's why he's been on the bench, or he offers something that Dan Robson doesn't. But then I would have had Robson on the bench, so at least you're giving them both a run out. And not just a run out, they're good quality scrum halves. So I think I'd have done that, especially given that Ben Youngs, I don't feel like he's been playing his best rugby. Mike Brown, well, apart from anything else, Mike Brown has told us all in his interview that he did his best, and his best involved a lot of mistakes. And
he has actually played fairly well.
Game one, he
I know he made a couple of mistakes. But...
Yeah, game one he played brilliantly, and we all said he has to be involved. Game two, he played fine, but he did make some mistakes under the high ball, which is supposed to be one of the main reasons why he's there. Despite ups and downs over the last few years, because he's meant to be so solid under the high ball. So we don't want to be seeing that from him. But actually, in his case, it's more about his response to that incident. It's more about the way that he kind of went, look, I did my best. Because I think if you genuinely believe that you did your best and lost to a team that's 5-6 places below you in the world rankings, then there's a problem.
Not anymore. I think we're ranked 6th in the world at the moment.
Not anymore. But at the time, but do you know what I mean? We've gone from second in the world down to wherever we are now. But my point being, I just think that was for an experienced international player like Mike Brown, who's been around. That's not the risk. And having had time to think about it, and knowing the interview is coming, and being able to prep for it, I don't think the right response is to say I did my best and everyone should leave me alone.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I think Mike Brown's played quite well. I think he's had a good tour, but and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be involved, but I don't necessarily see the value. I think you probably learn more by giving Dennis Solomona a start, by giving Nathan Earl a chance runner, because it's so hard, isn't it? Because it's one of those where you think, if Mike Brown's going to be the guy who's going to help us win this test match, what's more important, to give these guys a shout or to get that win? It probably is to get that win now. But then it's one of those, if we don't win, we'll all be shouting, that's ridiculous. We didn't learn anything from a new player. So, you sort of, it's very tough.
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
As the French would say.
As the French would say. Henry Slade also gets another shot. I'm not sure that's the right call either, but there it is. So yeah, a bit really happy to see Danny Cipriani in there. A little bit disappointed that there aren't a few more changes, or at least some other options on the bench. Because
I like Johnny Hill on the bench.
Well, so let's move on to the forwards. Mako, as we said, has gone home, so Joe Marler comes in for him. Otherwise, no changes in the front row. Eddie said he's really happy with the way the front row have played. So he clearly, he knows far more about what he's looking for in a front row than we do. I didn't think they'd been that great. Maybe it's just if you're one of the front row boys, you tend to find yourself on the wrong side more often than not. Jamie George has had a few issues with the referees.
I think Jamie George has been really unlucky with a couple of his penalties. There was an analysis where they showed some of the penalties Jamie George was given against him. I actually thought he was really unlucky because he made the tackle. He went in. Yes, he's on the wrong side, but then he's rolling away. He's in his arms. Not actually, in my mind, he wasn't actually blocking the ball. I did think it was really tough, the penalties against him. So.
But no changes there other than obviously Marler in for Mako, which means that the front row replacement is Luke Cowan-Dickey again with Hepburn and Harry Williams. So that's kind of what I wanted to see, but just not necessarily in the same order. But that's fine. And then, Johnny Hill comes in as second row cover because we've got Launchbury and Itoje starting, which it's kind of weird to be questioning that. 6 months ago, you'd be like, amazing. Launchbury and Itoje in the middle, that's awesome. I just feel quite strongly that Maro Itoje needs a little kick up the arse. I feel like dropping him to the bench would have given him that. But...
It's kind of weird. I'm with you, but it was weird what Eddie was saying that he's become a lot more vocal. It sounds like behind the scenes, Maro's been quite
Yeah, I mean,
quite a presence, quite a
maybe
beneficial presence. But
maybe he's been told, I'm looking at you for my future captain. You need to start acting like one so I can see it. Who knows?
yeah, but
Because
pitch,
we loved him. We loved Mako for captain not that long ago. He just doesn't seem nearly as vocal to us, from a spectator's point of view, as he did when he first came on the scene. And I think we just want to see that from him because it just shows that passion that seems to be lacking. But if it's there behind the scenes, it's just a case of he's got to get on and do his job.
So to play devil's advocate for Maro, people may be saying that I don't know. I guess you wouldn't mind seeing a captain whooping them for like I don't know. Maybe there's something said, but and also for Maro, I would like to see him rested because again we know what he can do. Johnny Hill, I really like. I'm really glad he's on the bench. He kind of reminds me. He's had a really good season for Exeter. He kind of reminds me a bit Joe Launchbury-esque, the way it's a real workhorse. Yep. A real honest game of rugby that you'll get out of him. So I'm glad he's getting a chance. He'll come on, and I just think Maro could do with sort of take the pressure off, have a rest. Maro. I mean, I wouldn't have been annoyed if he wasn't in the 23. To be honest, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I thought originally that was my thought process, and then I thought actually, do you know what? I want to see him think. I'm not guaranteed. It feels to me like he thinks he's guaranteed a spot. And although he probably is, I want him to know that there are other people being looked at. And, it is still necessary to prove yourself week in, week out.
Yeah.
But, I guess that pressure comes back when you have Cruz and Laws on, as well as your Johnny Hills and whoever else he's got out there in the second row. Back in both form and fitness, which isn't the case at the moment. So I don't know. Hopefully this is, if Eddie says that he's improved from game 1 to game 2. Let's hope that he improves even more in game 3, and we see Maro of old. He can go back to being known as Sir Maro of Itoje.
He certainly can, and I still love Maro a bit. I still think he's one of the finest players in the world. I just want him to find that bit of form for England, like he did for Saracens. And I'd love it if this weekend is the weekend, but that happens. I say that. I'm saying that a lot at the moment.
Yeah, we'd love it if anything happens that results in England having a larger tally on the scoreboard at the end. So finally the back row, Chris Robshaw comes back in because Brad Shields is ill. A lot of chat about, is that just the England camp saying it because they've dropped him and they don't want it to seem like another Sam Burgess? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think Brad Shields has looked fairly useful.
I think Brad Shields, and the whole Brad Shields thing. I think he's going to add value to being in the squad. He's going to be playing for Wasps, so I'm glad he was part of the touring party.
Yeah, forces eyes onto him, and as you say, a very senior player. Interestingly, we took all this chat about captain, and because he's only just appeared on the scene, we've all, we've obviously chosen not to even think about him from a captaincy point of view. But he's been doing that job for a while for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, he has, and I think he's a great leader. I think the problem is his first season in England rugby. I don't know. I necessarily want him to be. Yeah, but don't forget, Will Carling sort of grew up in English rugby generally. Yeah. And Will Carling was young, but you sort of, he knew the game, slightly different time. I told you who I want the captain. I still want Launchpad.
The Launchpad. The other, so Sam Simmons finally gets a showing on the bench.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. He's
kind of feel like
so much energy.
I would have really liked to have seen him at 6.
Yeah. With Nathan and Tom Curry.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's been put on the bench as number 8 cover because Eddie has said he's a number 8, not a flanker. But I really want to see him at flanker. And I think it would have been a perfect opportunity to put him in there with Curry and Hughes. If necessary, put Chris Robshaw on the bench as a sort of less as a finisher and more as if things are going wrong, he can go in and maybe shore things up a little bit. But he's not. He's on the bench. Hopefully, we'll see. Well, I'm sure we will see him, and hopefully he can make an impact again. It'd be lovely to see him do what he did when he came on for his first cap.
Yeah, it's a slightly different opposition, of course, because that was against Italy. But
yeah,
here's the thing that. So here's where I question Eddie the most. It's not about, is he the right man? Is he anything like that? Eddie says he picks the best players available. That's where I slightly disagree. Because he might pick in theory the best player, but I do think there's something to be said about picking somebody who's on great form, like a Woodward, for example, like a Don Armand, like a Sam Simmons, because that does tend to carry on. If you're really on fire for your club, and you just bring in a slight level of confidence. And I'm hoping that's what we're going to see with Danny Cipriani.
Yeah.
Because Danny Cipriani's had a brilliant season. And I do think there's something to be said. And this is where I slightly disagree with Eddie. Now, Eddie's twice for rugby brain that I am, or as we figured out last time, 10 times for rugby brain I am. But
8 times me.
no, you can't get less. But Eddie doesn't really doesn't seem to give much thought or much, much weight
on,
how they're performing, can't they? And I think that does make a big difference. The same as, I know it's different with cricket or something, but you see somebody, batting really well cricket coming to the England setup. They normally have a good knock because you've got that form, you've got that confidence, and I'd just like to see that a bit more with the rugby. Because I think there's been a few players who haven't necessarily, if you were picking based on form, wouldn't be involved.
Yeah.
And have come in, and I think there's some players who've really missed out, even though they've absolutely bossed it. Like a Woodward. I'd love to have seen Woodward have a chance. I think he's been absolutely brilliant for Gloucester.
I agree. I was going to say 6 months ago, we would have said, by the time this tour comes around, Eddie needs to know who his World Cup 32 is or whatever.
Yeah. We were hinting, weren't we? Yeah.
We were, and we put quite a lot of weight into it. We were saying how important it was, and then we kind of said, okay, he's got until. Actually, no, we said Six Nations just gone. In fact, not this tour. We said Six Nations just gone. We needed to know. Wasn't the case. We said this tour. It's not the case. He's got the autumn internationals. Quite aside from calling for his head and all this kind of stuff. From England's point of view, with a view to the World Cup, at what point is it too late to be trying things out? Or if you're in a situation where not needs must like injuries, but if you're in a situation where you're just not getting what you need from the players that you've got, do you continue to make changes right up until the last minute?
It's a tough one because that's a tough way to go into the World Cup. You want them to go into the World Cup with pretty much the same team they had in the Six Nations because you want them to at least have played that bit together. Ideally. So here's my other issue with that is come the autumn internationals, that's where you probably want the sort of World Cup team to be informed and to have a good idea. But I actually think you've still got players you need to rest, like an Owen Farrell, a Maro Toje, a Mako. They will have had no rest for ages. At some point, can they push on through to World Cup? I don't know. Maybe they can. But at some point, you're kind of thinking they could probably do with a bit of a rest.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
So I guess what my question is, all right, let's say that it comes round to the Six Nations 2019. Whatever's happened in the autumn's happened. You've got a Mike Brown who's playing, well, doing what a Mike Brown does at fullback. Let's say, for whatever reason, he's gone back there. Okay, and then you've got a Woodward who's absolutely bossing it again. Do you make the change, or do you say actually, I've got less than probably 6 months until the World Cup starts. Now's not the time to be introducing another a new key player. At what point do you say he may not be number one in England, but he's my choice, and now it's time to sort of say this is what we're going with. This team needs to then come together and with the goal of winning the World Cup.
So it's a bit of a sort of bell end answer to give, because it's almost a bit of a cop out. But I guess you got to weigh it up and just think, who's going to make the team play better? We've taken into account all of those. Like, if I bring in Woodward, he won't be as settled as thing, but the way he's playing, will that add enough value to sort of counter the experience of a Mike Brown? And I think often the answer might be a yes.
So you would potentially make changes right up until the last minute?
I think you can make changes up to the last minute if they're going to add value.
Right.
If it's a case of, look, they are playing a bit better form, but actually they're going to disrupt the team a bit. They're not going to know the calls. It's going to be, our game style is going to be a bit harder, so it's not worth it. Then you don't make the change. But I think you can make the changes up to the last minute. You don't want that to be the case. You're
of course
100%,
not. Of course not. And injuries and things can force it. This is more about where you have a choice. Guys, I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts on that. I will put a little poll. Definitely. I'll put a little poll on Twitter and see what people think. But get in touch, let us know. Is there a point at which you think Eddie Jones needs to say, right, this is my team and I'm sticking with it now and putting everything behind these 30-odd players? Or should he be open to change right the way up to the last minute if he feels like someone has hit a vein of form that's going to make the difference? Let us know what you think. That's probably a reasonable place to sort of call time on this episode. I mean, quickly predictions. We've been so right so far.
Yeah, we've bossed it so far.
South Africa, England to smash it. England to smash it. Danny Cipriani to have an absolute stormer. Sam Simmons to come on and score 2. England by 12.
I'm saying England by 3.
Okay. We'll see what happens. It might be wishful thinking at this stage, but it's the prediction that we're going for, and hopefully the boys can pull it off and just start. Do
you truly believe England will win?
Yeah, I do. I don't know why. I feel like to be honest, I think South Africa are going to put out a different side. I think they're going to say, look, we've already won this series. Let's try some combinations.
I want to see the South side first.
And I think England will be able to take advantage of that. So I think England will win, but I think it might be a slightly hollow victory. Well, it will be a hollow victory regardless. But from an England point of view, it's about getting a W back on the board, breaking the losing streak, and being able to say, right, Leaf turned over. Let's get this whole thing back on track. This whole World Cup train back on the tracks, and hopefully that's what happens by 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever it will be on Saturday. But guys, thanks so much for listening to us again today. As I say, get in touch, let us know what you think. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook at England Rugby Pod. You can email us, englandrugbypod@gmail.com. There is a website, www.englandrugbypod.com. Keep spreading the love. Rate us, review us, 5 stars only, please. Keep tuning in. And we will obviously be back to bring you the last of our South Africa series live-ish episodes on Saturday. You'll get all the reaction pretty much as it happens. So we'll hopefully speak to you.
And as the French and Del Boy would say, mange tout, Rodney, mange tout.
Cheers, guys.